So I have two teenagers who are in online schooling right now. They are on the screen for hours every day. As am I. I am working from home like many people in the United States right now, as is my husband. So that is four people online in the house for hours every day. And today I'm going to talk about ways that you can reduce substantially and also eliminate several sources of electromagnetic radiation and blue light, and that will help promote a healthier workstation for yourself. Electromagnetic fields have been linked in many published studies to harmful effects at very low levels. So I'm going to talk about how to make your computer workstation safer and healthier for your children, for yourself, and for those that you love. The reason that this is so important is because the large body of research that exists that associates electromagnetic fields, blue light, wireless, magnetic fields, electric fields, with harmful effects. And those are not only increased cancer, which you've probably read about and we have on our website at ehtrust.org, but most recently there was research from Kaiser Permanente looking at magnetic fields and linking pregnant women's exposure to magnetic fields with increased ADHD in the babies. They actually strapped a meter onto pregnant women and then followed them through their pregnancy, and then also looked at the health of the children.
Overall, I just give you an overview. We find it double, almost triples risk if you have high EMF exposure. Your miscarriage rate is 2.7 times higher. Your mother exposed during pregnancy, I'm talking about your child during index pregnancy, the child from index pregnancy, you have 250 times higher the risk of asthma. And also we publish almost 5 times the risk of obesity. And we also find a neurological problem with, in this case, ADHD. We also find out that there's 3 times the risk if you have a thyroid abnormality.
There's research that came out of Yale, both looking at research on mice and found that pregnant mice exposed to cell phone radiation had more hyperactivity and poor memory. And as well, research that was just published actually, funded by the American Cancer Association, looking at cell phone radiation, radio frequency, and finding an impact on the levels of thyroid cancer in people who used cell phones for the long term, but very specifically among people who had genetic susceptibilities. There's research that has found impacts to cognition, sperm damage, oxidative stress, which impacts our ability to heal from a myriad of illnesses, and especially impacts to brain development. So that is why it is so important to reduce electromagnetic fields when you are using computers, and especially for children whose brains are developing, because they are more exposed to this radiation. The wireless radiation penetrates their bodies more deeply and into their memory centers of their brain, for example, in comparison to adults. And of course, even if the exposure were the same, because their brains are developing, there's going to be more impact. They're more vulnerable to electromagnetic radiation. And then, of course, blue light. So this is a question I get asked all the time. I mean, we know that blue light impacts sleep, your cycle of your awake and sleep cycle. There's also impacts because of the ways that our cells are on a natural rhythm as well, and impacts to the skin. So this is not just about impacting sleep when we talk about blue light, but there's actually associations with breast cancer, cancer, and overall health. So and of course, mental health. I decided to do this webinar because of so many parents contacting us and asking us, what can I do to have a safer computer workstation for my child? And I'm going to go over all of these step by step. So you can pause this recording, and I wanted it to be hands-on. I want to show you different things that you can have, like different kinds of technology. There are products that you might need to purchase, like adapters for your computers and Ethernet wires, and I want to have all of that in here. There's also on ehtrust.org, we have a web page, which I link to right at the bottom of this video, where you can go, and it's all written out, and I think that'll be really helpful too. But we wanted to have the video source and then the written source, and also just a list of things that you might need. So please share this video widely. So the first step is to set up a computer weight workstation with a table and with a chair. Not on the couch, not on your lap. You don't want the laptop on your lap. I know it's called a laptop, but as it turns out, they really are not supposed to be on your lap for many, many reasons. Most importantly, the electromagnetic fields, both from the wireless radiation, if it's on Wi-Fi, and also the electric power. So you always want to have it, and then there's of course your eyes. You always want to have it on a table, your feet planted on the floor, have it at least 24 inches if possible. I know that seems really far. That's why you might want an external keyboard, and also an external mouse, both of which we hope will be wired, and I'm going to talk more about that. But let's start out with table, chair. You want to have a good viewing distance. Again, not on the couch, not on the bed, not on the floor. Set up a station for your child so that they, or for yourself, so that you are in a good physical position for ergonomics. Also remember to keep the glare down by adjusting the position of the screen. And really interestingly, I'll just throw up on the screen there, Dell Technology, they're a manufacturer of laptops. They even say all of these things about positioning for ergonomics, and they also state that this isn't meant to be used continuously because of the physical position that it puts your body in. So that's why it's really important to set up the device on a table. Okay, so the next step is addressing the blue light from the screens. So you want to, and we recommend having blue light protection on all screens. That means from cell phones to iPads to, even TV screens, laptops, computers, and iPads, tablets. All screens should have a blue light protection. Now, what does that mean? Well, I'll tell you my situation. My situation is that there are a lot of things that can be done, but I have teenagers that actually don't want to do those things. So what I use is multiple levels of protection. First, I have a screen, I have an example here, that you can put over every single screen, and it permanently affixes, like with tape, or that's what I used. I used clear tape. This is a flexible blue light protection, kind of amber colored, and I have it on all the screens. It really can't be removed, and actually you can barely tell it's there once it's up. And that way it's on no matter what. Now, I also have, the problem, I should say, is that there are some people say, well, they don't want to use it because your screen looks different. I think that our eye health is more important and most important, and I should add something. Kids are more vulnerable to the impacts of blue light. So we talk about impacts to sleep from blue light, for example. But something else that's really important is actually irreversible eye damage. So children have developing eyes, and they don't have full protections in terms of blue light till you're in your 20s. Now, even in your 20s, you are not completely protected from blue light, but you're more vulnerable as your eye is developing. And there's actually scientists who are warning about impacts such as macular degeneration and other eye eye damage, which can occur from blue light, especially during childhood, the overexposure to artificial blue light. So this is really important for kids. And this is another kind. It's a hard acrylic blue light blocker, which I also have, and I fit it. You can go right over the screen like that. I actually have one on that doesn't cover the camera right now. If you are interested in learning more about blue light, I recommend, and yeah, we have this on our website, the press release by the French ANSES, that's the French Health Agency. Their report on blue light impacts to wildlife, the environment, and to people, and especially to children who are more vulnerable. And they have a couple recommendations about blue light, very important. Everything from the importance of having screens that mitigate this artificial blue light, as well as looking at outdoor blue lights, like on our lights we have outside because of the impacts to wildlife, about the importance of addressing the impacts to more vulnerable people who are more vulnerable, children, and also the elderly or people who have eye disease. And then also looking at, which you might be asking, well, how do I know that this product really does what they say it will do? This is my question as well. And we really need to have regulations in place and procedures so that we can compare products. So I have this as well, this blue blocking acrylic, which can sit right over the screen. And the other thing that you can do, and I'll just tell you what I do. I do three things. I have a downloadable software, which can be downloaded onto the screen to address flicker and blue light to a degree. I also have a permanent screen that does not come off, but I think it does let some of the blue light in. And then I have a more permanent blue light blocker as well, which is hard, which can come off and on in addition. So I use three things. And I don't think, at least from what I have heard from eye doctors, is that the downloadable programs are enough. You have to actually go and add another layer as well. And in addition, there are blue light blocking glasses like these, which you can also wear to substantially reduce the blue light. And if you go to Consumer Reports, they actually looked at the glasses and found that the ones under $10 worked among the best in terms of blocking blue light. So it doesn't have to cost a fortune. The problem with only using glasses, however, while it can address eye strain and reduce the blue light, is that your skin is actually exposed to the blue light, and there is research showing impacts to skin. So it's really good to get it decreased on the screen as well. And I'd also like to point out lighting. The lighting that you have near your workstation, you want to not use LED, bright LEDs or fluorescent lights, because they also have blue light in them, or fluorescent lights especially. Fluorescent lights also, and that's the kind with like the curly bulb that also has mercury, which is toxic when it breaks. But in addition, there's some research that looked at pinhole cracks in the white that's coating these fluorescent lights, which can allow UV light out. So if you have it like I did before I learned about this issue, I had it right near, like it'd be like right here next, like that light was fluorescent light so that I could see at my desk. I was unaware that it should absolutely not be that close to the face. So you want to have always set up a light source in the room where the computer is that is to the side, not behind, but to the side of the computer, so that there's other light. You don't want to have the screen that you're on be the only light. And that, of course, is yet another reason why you don't want to sleep with your phone, you don't want to sleep with your laptop. No, you should not be in your bed at night with the screen, watching a show when everything's dark and that's the only light that you have in the room. It's actually really not good for your eyes. So I am going to talk about two kinds of electromagnetic radiation that come out of your laptop. Now, we often talk in Environmental Health Trust, we talk about wireless and radio frequency. And that is from the wireless antennas, which are on your laptop. They are often, sometimes they're up here, sometimes they're in the back behind here, and sometimes they're in the front. Depends on your device. So that is wireless radio frequency that comes out of your laptop. And that can be eliminated by connecting with an Ethernet. The second kind of radiation, electromagnetic field that comes off of your laptop is electric and magnetic fields. And that is from the battery as well as the electricity that powers the laptop. So I'm going to talk about how to address these. Let's start with the electric and magnetic fields. This is why you do not want the laptop on your lap. Even if you've removed the wireless by using Ethernet, if you have the laptop on your lap, you're going to be getting magnetic and electric fields. So you always want to have the device at a distance from your body, not on your legs. If you can, charge it during your breaks. Don't, when you're not on the device, try to have it working off battery, again on the table, on battery, rather than being charged as you're working on it. And in the same way, if you have, we have one, and I'm going to talk about cell phones at length, but not right now. In the same way, you don't want to be using your cell phone when it is charging, and you don't want to be putting it to your head. I'll talk more about that later. So going back to the laptops, so if you can charge it during your breaks, and charge it not near your body, don't charge it near on your bedstand. At night, you don't want to have any electronics near your bed at night, of course. So if you can have a grounded power cord for your charging for your laptop, it will significantly decrease the electromagnetic fields that are actually moving through your body as you use the device. Okay, so when I bought my Mac, it came with this power adapter that I use to charge it, right? You can just take this off and you can buy one of these. It's quite inexpensive, and what it allows for is 3 prongs, which means that it is grounded. Then you have a grounded plug for your Mac, and so you just put it like this, it snaps right on, gets a longer cord, and this way you're charging in a grounded way, and you're not having more of that electricity go through your body. I thought it was really interesting, and again, I linked to it on the page at ehtrust.org that corresponds with this webinar. But I couldn't believe that actually Dell, who is a manufacturer of laptops, talks about how that the human body can actually conduct the electromagnetic field because they are only using a 2-prong. So this is a 2-prong plug, a 2-prong plug to plug in. And really, really important if you can do that. There's also ways to ground your computer and your wires, and we have links to that on the EHT webpage. Now I'm going to talk about how you can turn the Wi-Fi off your laptop and still have an internet connection that connects to the internet but is wired, meaning the data is moving through a wire instead of through the wireless in the air, which of course penetrates into your body. So the first thing I want to show you is, the first thing you want to do if you have a laptop, for example, is to figure out, maybe you never even thought about this, but you want to know what you have on your laptop in terms of ports. Those are like the plugs the different plugs that you can plug things into. Look on both sides, see what you have. If you have a port that looks like this, that is an Ethernet port. So this is an Ethernet cord and an Ethernet port, and very easily you can just plug in the Ethernet into your laptop if it has a port for that. Really, really easy. Then you take the other end and you plug it. And this is just showing you an example of a modem that I have. And you just plug it into the other end of that. And you can get cords that are all different sizes. I use shielded Cat7 Ethernet, and you have now the data will be going through the cord. It will not be in the air in Wi-Fi moving through your body, but there are a couple things that you need to do as well now that you've attached your laptop with an Ethernet. So some of you do not have an Ethernet port on your laptop. Instead, you might have a USB or you might have a Lightning port. So that's why you want to get an adapter. This is what I use for my Mac. You can see you can plug into the Ethernet easily this way. And then it has a USB that you plug into the laptop. Now there's also ones that have Lightning attaching. There's this, which I use with my Mac as well because I have more ports for USB, for the mouse and the keyboard, which are wired as well. And there's all kinds of adapters. So what you need to do, if you have a Mac, you can easily get, and we do recommend generally, these sometimes work and sometimes don't. You really have to make sure that the adapter you buy works for your make and model. So Chromebooks also, many different models can be hardwired with the right adapter. Sometimes when you call up the manufacturer, they say it's not possible. It is possible for many models. So take the time and do your research online. There are a lot of people who are trying to do this, and they have put that information up. Now, usually I don't like just looking randomly at online, going online to find answers, but this is one of those crowdsourcing, just incredible ways that you can get information, because there are many people who are trying to use Ethernet connections because they're faster, safer, and more secure. And you won't have that problem of like the Wi-Fi dropping out or poor spotty service, because when it goes through the wire, it's super fast and really works well. So I really recommend that you make sure that you have, especially for iPads. So we have a couple adapters that we have up on the website that work. However, depends on your model. So I really recommend you look up, I have an iPad this, what's a good Ethernet adapter? Find a number of people that have done it that way. And that's really, really helpful. Or if you purchase something, make sure that you can return it if it doesn't work. And I would just add that it is outrageous, completely outrageous, that we have to go through all of this trouble just to have a safer wired connection, which does not create wireless emissions in our device. Okay, so now that you have this hardware that is connecting, there's a couple steps we have to remember here, and that is that on your laptop, whatever kind of laptop you have, it's still going to be emitting Wi-Fi unless you turn off the wireless antennas. So, for example, this laptop is connected with Ethernet. Let's imagine I was still using it. However, it is still checking continuously with the routers both in my home, which I don't have, but if I did, or outside to make a Wi-Fi connection just in case I want to connect to Wi-Fi, because that's how the devices are set up. Except I don't want that. Those are short pulses that are going through my body. So I recommend that you go into the settings of your device and you turn the Wi-Fi antennas off. You also want to turn the Bluetooth antennas off, if you have location, hotspot, cellular, all of those antennas you want to turn off. One way that used to work beautifully is airplane mode. There should be airplane mode on your iPad or tablet, for example. Now, with some devices, airplane mode isn't enough. You want to make sure you've got airplane mode, Bluetooth off, just turn any in the settings where you can turn off all of that. In the Mac, if you go up to the right side, there's a little fan looking thing. You can turn the Wi-Fi off that way. Be sure again to do Bluetooth. Okay, I have to tell you something else, and I realize this might seem like a lot of things. Once you get it down, you'll just have it so down, though. It'll really just seem easy. But one thing I want to add is that when you install a new operating system, it can actually turn on a lot of antennas. So my kids just downloaded an operating system so they could be on Zoom for school, and what do you know? It reactivated some of the antennas that we've never had on, like Bluetooth. And thankfully I have a meter, which I highly recommend having. I'm going to show you a couple different meters actually at the end of this, but I was able to figure that out. So reason to have a meter, and also to check that all your antennas are off. Now, when it comes to the router or modem, and this is a modem, you also are getting emissions if it is a Wi-Fi router. And pretend it's for a Wi-Fi router. Actually, I have one to show you. Here. Okay. And not all of them actually have antennas on them anymore. There's often these big black boxes that some internet providers will send you. These are emitting radio frequency radiation all the time. They're always sending out emissions to check if any devices want to connect with it. So you really want to be able to, since you're now connected, let's pretend you're connected with, I'm not going to use this, I'm going to use this one actually. If you're connected with Ethernet, then you want to turn the Wi-Fi off of the modem. There are several ways to do this, and I'm going to go over all of them. First, I highly recommend that you purchase your own modem. At this point, it really is the safest way to go because you can control that modem better. What I have found, and I'm also going to tell you how to turn the Wi-Fi antennas off of your modem that you have. However, there are some caveats with that. So if you can, and you think about it, a lot of people rent the modem from their internet provider. Well, that seems easy, right? It's like, who wants to deal with getting a modem? But there are some problems with that, which I'm going to talk about. So if you buy your own, it's an initial investment, but it really pays off after, 2 years, 3 years. Makes sense. So if you can buy one, what you need to do is contact your internet provider and ask them, you want to make sure that the one that you purchase is compatible with your service. This is really important. In our area, we have Comcast and Verizon. I actually have moved 3 times. I've dealt with all of them. And each time I called Comcast, you have to get a Comcast compatible modem. Same with Verizon. And I get them with no Wi-Fi at all. Now, if you are in a situation where you feel like you have to have Wi-Fi sometimes for something, and I have family members who say, look, I'm willing to do all this, but I still need Wi-Fi sometimes. And in that case, an option that you can do is buy a separate Wi-Fi router, which you plug into the modem. So you have a modem with no Wi-Fi, then you get a separate Wi-Fi router, which you can turn off and on. There are some that have a hard switch that you can just turn them on and off, and that way you can really be in control of that exposure instead of having the non-stop exposure from a modem all the time, which is what most people are currently living with. Now, as an example, with this, I just want to show you, on the back, you can see that there's a lot of ports. There's actually a way to turn the Wi-Fi off of this, and by going into the router. So I talked about buying one, which I hope, if you are able to, that you will look into it and look into purchasing your own modem. The next step is, like, right now, what do? You can actually do two few things. You can, because let's say you don't have a Wi-Fi free apparatus, you don't even have Ethernet right now. I recommend turning it off, especially at night when not in use. Really being aware that it is having emissions. So when it's on, that is, you're being exposed to it. You do not want a Wi-Fi router to be near your body, near your child's body. I had a modem that just was on my desk. Well, this is not a good place for something that's emitting all the time. There's also a way, let's say you have one of these from in your house, and a lot of people actually do. You can have one plugged in. You can go into the modem by all the routers and modems actually have an admin and a password. You can go in through your computer, make sure that you're connected with a wire, then go in to it and turn the Wi-Fi antennas off. Now, what I found was with different carriers, that works better than others. With these older ones that people have bought, you actually can go and turn those antennas off. With some carriers, you go in, you turn those antennas off, and there are other antennas on. I've just gone down a rabbit hole, so bear with me, but it actually becomes important because your goal is to have the emissions off. So you want to get a safer modem for your home. And in the meantime, we recommend turning it off, or if you are in a situation where you need to be online, have the router at a distance from your body, not close to your body. We have a Comcast, so the cable attaches to here. Then there is an Ethernet that goes out from here, which can go into your laptop. You also can get a, this is called a port switch, so that you go from the modem into it, and then you actually can connect. It's kind of like a splitter. They do not use the word splitter. I'm just using it because it makes sense to me. We know we can split a line, but it actually will allow you to plug many Ethernet into here. Let's say you have 4 people on the computer, which we do. We actually have in our basement one of these that has 6, and we have 6 lines running off of it that run throughout the house. So you can plug in several computers. In addition, the one that I have here, you can connect to your telephone. So, and we pay for a telephone line. You plug it in here, and then you have a telephone cord, and you can run your phone, a corded phone, like this, runs off of it. And so I'm not getting the wireless from the cordless phone, because this is a home cordless phone, which many people I talk to have them right, of course, in their bedroom on the desk, except the base, this is a decked base. It emits radio frequency radiation all the time, non-stop. It's kind of like having a mini cell tower in your home. And then the handsets, when you use them, are also emitting radio frequency radiation. So a lot of people have these at their computer workstation on their desk. But really what you want to do is have a corded phone like this, which I use. We recommend, to reduce magnetic and electric fields, to not have a phone that necessarily needs electricity. So this is like the phone that I have. It's line powered. If it is a line powered phone, I still have caller ID. and it doesn't use an electrical, it doesn't need to be plugged in. Now, if you can use a copper landline, those are the best. They are the best for emergencies because 911 can reach you, but in my situation and in many people across the country, in the United States, we're not even able to get a copper landline anymore, which is absolutely unacceptable, but it is the reality that we face. So you have a couple options. One I just talked to you about, which is to contact your provider and your internet provider and to ask for a phone line. There's some other things that you can do. You can get a voice over IP. That is called a voice over internet protocol. And then you can get equipment that comes with that will allow you to plug in a corded phone. A corded phone like this. There's one thing to be aware of whenever you get voice over IP. That is, or there's a company called UMA. There's a couple companies that do this. The problem is you want to make sure that you don't get equipment that is wireless. You want to ask for the non-wireless option, and they're still out there. You also can do what a lot of people are doing, which is they've got their computer set up with a wire with Ethernet, and then they do Skype calls or other internet ways to make phone calls, and it's quite inexpensive, and then they're not having the radiation emissions. So I wanted to add a quick tip. So just a quick tip. This phone, for example, came with this short little line. I like to do the dishes. I might fold laundry. I do like a million things while I'm on the phone with my friends. And you can buy a super long cord. You can just go to the internet and buy an extension so that you can do more and you're not like bound to 3 feet of your phone. Okay, so let's talk about peripherals and accessories that you have. So for example, this is a speaker and it has a cord. You don't want to use a Bluetooth or a Wi-Fi speaker. They're these Alexa things, these virtual speakers that people have that they can ask questions to. Unfortunately, those are emitting radio frequency, wireless radiation all the time, and we would recommend that you come up with another solution to get the answers you need because they don't have a way to wire them. If anyone wants to start calling on the companies that are creating these virtual speakers to have a corded option, please let us know. We would love to support that. If we had more bandwidth, we would be doing that right now. But unfortunately, right now, all of those devices that come in like small ones for kids, rainbow colored, they emit radio frequency radiation. Parents are unaware. They're buying them for their kids to be reading to them at night, not aware that they are exposing their kids to this radiation. So instead, get a speaker like this with a wire. You can absolutely get them over the internet. Make sure that they don't have Bluetooth capability or Wi-Fi capability, because even if you plug them in, they are still going to be emitting radiation. This goes for your keyboard as well. Make sure that your keyboard is wired, not wireless. This also goes for headsets. I would say a couple things. First, there's also research showing impacts to our hearing from using those earphones all the time. So you want to have the devices, the sound through speakers, which is not right on your ear, as much as possible. But if you're in a situation where you do need some kind of headset, be sure you use AirTube. This goes for a cell phone as well as your computer speaker. Use AirTube because this keeps the extremely low frequency fields from actually traveling up the metal and the wire. You definitely don't want to use a Bluetooth or a headset that is using wireless, because that is getting yet another layer of wireless radiation into the space where your body is, which means it's penetrating into your body. So for a mouse, you don't want to use a Bluetooth or a wireless mouse. You want to use a wired mouse. Every accessory you have, as I showed you, the speaker should be wired, not wireless and not Bluetooth. Let's talk about wireless printers. They emit very high levels of wireless radiation, some of them all the time, whether you're printing something or not. So as an example, I am a clinical social worker, and I used to work in an ADHD clinic along with doctors and psychiatrists and other psychologists. And in my office, I didn't have any wireless, but there was wireless in the office, but my levels were low where I was working. And one day I brought my meter in just to check and found that the levels had gotten super high, especially right in the corner where I sat. So I went outside and went into my neighbor's office. She's a psychiatrist, and found that it was her wireless printer. It was emitting such high levels, and she had it right up against the wall. So of course it was right up against where I was sitting. And I went to her the next day and told her about it. And she immediately, very easily, got a wire to connect her printer to her computer. They were both on the desk anyway, so it didn't even need to be wireless, actually. And immediately changed the settings inside of the printer to turn those antennas off. So you can do this too. Sometimes you have to contact the manufacturer of the printer. If you say, well, but I always use my printer with my wireless devices. As you're setting everything up, this is just going to come much easier. And yes, you might have to take a USB stick and go from, one computer, your iPad or something, that if you're typing on something, and put it into your computer. But we can figure those things out just by knowing the issue. And so if you can, and this is what we ended up doing, I got a printer which doesn't have any Wi-Fi. I also needed one that didn't have laser printing, because actually there are fumes. There are fumes from all printers, and I needed to use an inkjet. It's a little challenging to find, but I was able to find one online. You also can turn the antennas off inside the printer, as I talked about in the settings. Another option is to have it unplugged when you're not using it, and use it connected with a wire. But again, unplug it, because some of them will emit even when you're not using them, like the psychiatrist whose office was next to mine. So I hope that that's helpful on printers. And I want to remind you that any electronic, a printer, even if it's non-wireless, a router or modem, even if it has no Wi-Fi, they're emitting magnetic fields. You don't want it to be near your body. You want it to be at a distance from your body. In addition, all of the wires that you might have, like the electrical cords, all of these, they should not be all right near your body, kind of running over the side of the table, like many of us have rat's nests. You want to have all of those wires organized and to the back and as far away as possible on the table. So just a reminder to keep all the electrical cords, wireless or not, you want to have them away from your body. Oh, I forgot to mention this. You also want to charge away from your body and when you're not using the device. So if you're charging something, have it on a hard table, not on a cushion or a couch or a sofa, or leave it charging on your bed. Have it on a hard table, charging, not when you're with it. Wireless charging. We do not recommend wireless charging. There are a lot of electromagnetic fields that you are exposed to, especially extremely low frequency fields. Wireless power charging as well. Better to use a corded way to charge all of your devices. For those of you who only have a cordless phone right now and want to know how to reduce exposure, I'm going to share with you how to reduce exposure to your cell phone. I will say that my dream, and what we need more than ever, is something that looks like this, that does everything a cell phone does in terms of taking pictures, taking video, storing an amazing amount of information, and making phone calls and texting and all of this stuff. I want one which doesn't have any wireless antennas, which there is fully the capability and research available to create something like this. So my dream is that there'll be what looks like a cell phone, and the other end plugs into the Ethernet, and I can do everything on it and never even have to turn on a Wi-Fi antenna. But what that means, I just want to give you my dream for a second, is that wherever I go, even the grocery store, or if I'm out on a walk, that there are ports where I can connect and tap into the internet, so that sometimes I go out on the road with my kids, dropping people off places, doing all kinds of things that parents do, and I need to connect with my husband about one thing or another. And there needs to be a way that I can do that. There used to be payphones, but all those payphones have been taken away. So that is my vision for what we need. But until that time, I'll tell you what I do. I use my home corded phone for pretty much all my calls as much as possible. And I pre-plan. And if you pre-plan, you can decrease overall the time that you use a cell phone. However, there are many people for whom that's not an option at all, to just use, their home corded phone. Or there are many people who have an office where you can make sure that you have a corded phone, like I do. I am privileged to have that option. But for many people who work in trucking or delivery or driving taxis or Ubers, for example, where this is not an option. And that is why we need policy change. And that is why this is an occupational health issue. It is an environmental justice issue, and why we need policy change more than ever, so that we have protections for our workers and for people who don't have a choice in the matter. So I wanted to just go over some ways to reduce exposure to your cell phone if you're in a situation where you need to use a cell phone. First, be aware that distance is your friend. So you want to have distance from the phone. You don't want to put it right up to your head when you talk. Put it on speaker, or use those air tube headset, preferably speaker at a distance. If you can set it down far from yourself, that is the best way, so that your hand isn't on it. You want to learn about airplane mode, because there's a lot of times when you can turn the phone off when you don't need it. So turn it off more often. Use it if you want to take video or take pictures. Use it on airplane mode with the Bluetooth and the Wi-Fi and location antennas off to do all of that. However, don't send pictures and video as much or at all, because actually what I'm going to tell you is that when you send big files like video or pictures, there's more transmission, more radiation going to be moving through the air wirelessly. If you can have a phone which you can move data through the wire, do that to download your pictures and your video. In fact, I should have mentioned this earlier, you can actually hardwire your telephone, many cell phones, not all, but many of them, for many of the applications which I'm talking about, such as sending through different kinds of things you'd normally use the Wi-Fi on. You can connect it by Ethernet. I have some of those options up on the EH Trust website, which this links to, so that you can connect your iPhone or your phone through the Ethernet. However, obviously there's no Ethernet port, right? So there is different, depending on your model, and you have to find this out. Again, it's kind of like connecting your iPad to the Ethernet. You need to research your phone make and model, make sure you have the right adapter that then goes to Ethernet. so that you don't need to use wireless all the time on your phone. Few other things. Turn off the antennas you're not using if you're not using them. So why have the Bluetooth antenna on when you're not using Bluetooth? Why have the Wi-Fi antennas on when you're not using Wi-Fi? Turn all the antennas off and only turn the one on that you're using at that time, and turn it off when you're done. The Environmental Health Trust has a lot of materials. Here's one. The front, we have keep the phone out of the pocket, keep it out of your bra, don't rest it on your body. On the back, we have some tips, and we have pages and pages of ways to reduce exposure to your phone. I'll read you a couple of them. So don't have it near your head. Don't sleep with your phone. Please don't. If you need to be woken up in the morning, use a battery-powered alarm clock. These are indispensable. We have multiple of these in our home so that every person who has a bed has a battery-powered alarm clock right next to it. If you're traveling in the car, you're going to want to reduce the time that you are have any wireless devices. It's best to have them completely off in a car. There's more radiation exposure in a car for a couple of reasons. First, when you're moving from cell tower to cell tower, there can be peaks as the phone is switching to each cell tower it passes. So, second, car is metal, and the radiation emissions from the phone can reverberate throughout the vehicle. So if you're sitting next to someone who's using a cell phone, you are actually getting some of that exposure. It's less than the person who's using it, but it can be quite substantial when there are a number of people in the car with devices, or even with just one, especially because of the metal, the reflections. So it's really better. And we've been in situations where you're on a road trip, you can't find a payphone, because I always try to use a payphone, or stop and go to a store and ask them if I can use their phone. Step outside the vehicle to make that call. Don't use FaceTime or any kind of video streaming apps. That's more radiation that you're getting to yourself when it's wireless. So it's best to choose to text, and I don't mean text 100 times a day. That doesn't solve your problem. The recommendation from many experts used to be text rather than voice, but there's a caveat there because, of course, kids text hundreds and hundreds of texts a day, and they're often texting with it right up against their breast or their abdomen, and there's a lot of exposure happening there. So unfortunately, we have not identified a safe level of this radiation. Levels that are substantially lower than are legal have been found to cause adverse effects, harmful effects, in many studies. So it is not that there's this low level that we're trying to attain. Really, you want to eliminate the sources as much as possible. And the more you use a cell phone, and if you have a cell phone, you're part of this whole cell tower system, which is ever increasing the levels that we're exposed to on the ground from these towers. So if we have a cell phone, even if we're barely using it, we're still part of that. And that's why it's so important to be talking to your elected official. Another thing to be aware of is that the signal strength is really important in terms of your own exposure. If you are in an area of low signal, and that can be in your basement, an elevator, out in a rural area where there's not any connection, and you're trying to make a call and you only have one bar, you have a very low signal, the radiation exposure can be so much higher. It can be up to and over, in fact, 10,000 times much radiation can come out of the device because it's putting out all of this power trying to reach the cell tower that it's connecting to. So you really don't want to use a phone in those circumstances as much as possible. And I realize that it's kind of a life shift. A lot of what I talk about is a bit of a life shift but it makes a huge difference, and our health is, of course, worth it. Now, for some of you who are unable to change out the Wi-Fi right now, be sure that the device is off the lap and at a distance. Turn the Wi-Fi router off, especially when not in use, so that you can avoid all unnecessary radiation exposures. Minimize your use of times where the radiation is going to be the highest. That's going to be when you're streaming video, pictures, moving large data, when you're in an area of low signal. So you want to decrease your use of any wireless device or cell phone at that time, those high times of high transmission rates. What else? There's so many things, so many like tips and tricks that can help you reduce exposure. Work offline and use word processing where you don't have to always be online. Even if you use Google Docs, which has privacy issues, which I haven't even talked about, but if you're using that for work or for school, which many kids are, then you actually can have it onto your computer so it doesn't have to be online to use that. So anytime you can turn the Wi-Fi off and work offline is going to benefit you. When you think about the research that has found just under half an hour a day of cell phone use connected with increased risks for a type of malignant brain tumor after 10 years of use, all of these steps really will have a huge impact on your overall exposure. So rather than just throwing in the towel, as a lot of people do, they say, oh, I can't handle this. This is way too much information for me. It's too many steps. I am telling you that if you break it down and take it one step at a time and use the resources that we're providing you, I have it all written up so that you can take it step by step, you will have made a lot of changes that will substantially reduce your exposure to blue light, to wireless, and to magnetic and electric fields. I have a couple other things I want to talk about, like electromagnetic interference, and also blue light in terms of the lighting in your home. So if you have dimmer switches, switch to regular switches, not dimmer switches, just a straight up and down. I have a whole list of ways that we're exposed to electromagnetic interference. Please take a look at that, and you can make some of those changes. There's so many things that you can do to reduce exposure. I want to give you a quick tip if you're traveling. This happens all the time. People ask, well, I'm traveling a lot. What do I do? I know a lot of us are not traveling right now with COVID-19, but when things get back to normal, which they will, my hack is that I go to the business section of the hotel, and there's often computers which are hardwired, and I take their Ethernet port and I plug it into my computer so that I don't have to use the Wi-Fi, especially when I'm moving videos, which I often am, and I try to use the wire as much as possible. Now I'm going to talk to you about electromagnetic meters. And there are a lot of meters on the market. If you can, we really recommend getting a higher quality meter and also getting different meters for different types of electromagnetic fields. So let me give you some examples. These aren't the only kind of meters. This is just what I have. So I have two radio frequency meters. This is an acoustimeter, which I really like because it has lights. Let me show you. This is the radiation that is in my home, which is considered quite low for a residential neighborhood in the DC area. And I'm going to turn the Wi-Fi on right now just to show you what happens when I turn. So I just turned the Wi-Fi on my laptop. I'm going to turn it off. I do not have wireless in my home, but there is, of course, wireless coming from the neighbors. Someone just asked, well, what's the point of doing all this if the neighbors have Wi-Fi? Well, actually, unless you're living really, far distance from a lot of people, super low EMF, it's hard to escape other people's Wi-Fi. However, you will significantly reduce those high exposures that you get from your personal use of devices by following these steps. It really does make a difference in decreasing your exposure. It doesn't fix the problem completely because you just walk outside, or your kid in school, or any community library, and there's going to be exposures. However, this will reduce the levels in your home and that you are doing to yourself. So it is an absolute important first step. And you can substantially reduce the levels that are really near, like, you have the device on your lap and it's got Wi-Fi, or even here, if this was a laptop, there's going to be exposures to your head, to your chest, to your breast, to your abdomen, and really to your whole body. This is another meter. It is the Safe and Sound Pro, and I'm going to just show you my levels now, and now I'm going to turn on the Wi-Fi just so you can see what happens when the Wi-Fi is on. That's not even all the antennas. I haven't even turned Bluetooth on. I'm going to turn it off. And now it's off. I also have, this is a little pocket meter that's sort of handy for keep it in your pocket and you just want to do a quick check of what the levels are. That's by Safe and Sound also. I have this, I don't think they make these anymore, but I use this for, it's a tri-field for magnetic fields. And I don't know if you can see, but I'm going to go closer to the, see now I'm really close to the laptop, and see how high it got. In fact, let's turn the setting a little bit different. And it gets really high when you put this underneath the laptop. This is measuring magnetic fields right now. You also can use just as plain old, this is an AM FM radio, and I will put the model. You can buy these used, and you can tune it to get levels of electromagnetic interference. It's one way to do that. There's also other meters, Stetzer meters, that you can use for that as well. Something I wanted to show you was the Bluetooth signal. So what I'm going to actually do is go and turn on the Bluetooth just so that you can see. Sorry. That's the Bluetooth. Now I'm going to turn it off and make sure. So now it's off. I just turned the Bluetooth on and off. What I like about the meters, both the Safe and Sound and the Acoustimeter, and I know other meters do this as well, is when they have sounds for the different frequencies, because then it can help you when you're in your home identify what you need to address. Now, something that is so important that I would want to repeat at every step of this is that some of you are probably watching this and saying, oh my goodness, I feel overwhelmed. For some of you, this is financially impossible to take all of these steps and afford all of the equipment. Now it might, it does cost, for the adapters, it might cost from 12 to, especially in some of the Mac adapters that we need, to $70 for one adapter. My adapter is about $30. But then there's the screens. All of these things cost money, which we cannot all afford. This is an environmental justice issue. And it goes back to the importance of policy change. This means that in order to have meaningful, long-lasting change with everything I just talked about, we actually need to go beyond our personal use of these devices and take that step with our elected officials to let them know about this and ensure that they take actions to protect us. Those actions should be reducing the levels that we're exposed to every day, from not just in schools, but at work or when you walk outside because of the cell towers, and especially in schools. People should not be forced to be exposed to this radiation, which we know causes harm from all of these studies. So get involved, talk to your elected officials. This is the time. More than ever, this is the time. Because we want to save lives. We don't want to switch from one toxic exposure to another. Some of the things I've talked about really, having like hard switches on routers, for example. Like, not this one because doesn't have any Wi-Fi, but there's some of these where when I was in actually visiting some family out of town, they had a modem, and all you had to do was press this button and it turned the Wi-Fi off, like one switch. Why don't all hardware devices that we buy at the store, why don't they all have a switch so it's so easy to turn off? Why don't they all have an option without Wi-Fi? We should have these options, and that we can contact businesses about, putting in petitions if they don't respond, raising awareness on this so that we have options when we go shopping. But most importantly is dealing with these exposures that we really can't control, like cell towers, small cells, quote unquote small cells, which are microwave antennas being put right in front of our homes. 5G, and we have so much information on 5G. I hope that you go to our website at ehtrust.org and read that research on 5G. These are radiation exposures that really we can't control unless we have policy change and regulations that protect us. So, well, actually, I should say there is some shielding that can be done, which I'm going to talk about in a minute. But when you walk outside, we're not able to control that. And it's critical that we get involved. Before I learned about this issue, I had never gone to speak in a council meeting. And I realized how important it was. This was about 2 decades ago. And I have, as they say, even if you have some fear in public speaking, you can have that fear. Bring it with you. It's okay. But go for it. They need to hear from us. They need to know, our elected officials need to hear from us. They need to know this is important so that they have the courage and the political will to make the changes we need. A couple things I didn't mention I want to add. Building biologists and having a professional come to your home. We highly recommend, especially if you're looking at shielding, because with 5G, some of you may be in homes which are near antennas right outside your bedroom window. How do you address that? Well, you can either have that antenna taken down, which is a process many people on this call are engaged in, or you can put up shielding. But it's critical that you have a professional measurements done whenever you put up shielding, because you could put shielding up on one wall thinking, oh, this will shield, but then you're not aware that there is an antenna coming from another direction, which you're not aware of, that's then hitting that shielding, reflecting back into your space. So there are several experts who are working on this and can help you take measurements. I have links to those on the website. The Institute for Building Biology is an excellent resource. They do training. They have building biologists that can come out and measure your home and help you make these changes. If you are experiencing illness or symptoms from the microwave or electric fields, magnetic fields, then what I've discussed is really just first steps, because there's going to need to be more steps likely that you need to take to make your home safer. This webinar is for people who are taking their first steps in understanding what they can do to reduce electromagnetic fields, blue light, radio frequency, electric fields, magnetic fields. But it is really just a start, because there are a lot of steps that need to be taken. So I'm here in the home with the whole family, and we're all in our little rooms on screens. Take a break. Take a break from the screen whenever you can. Get outside. Take a walk. Try to get natural light. The artificial light, the blue artificial light from our screens, has so many health impacts, but actually natural light can be very healing, especially if you get it in the morning They're different. It's a different exposure to these natural frequencies, and especially in the evening as the sun's going down. Sit in front of a window and have your morning coffee or tea or water or lemon juice and water or vinegar and water. Please learn more at Environmental Health Trust at ehtrust.org. If you are listening to this and you are thinking about schools and your kid in school where there are laptops on laps or iPads and tablets on laps, and where there's no actions being taken to reduce the electromagnetic fields from the device, as well as addressing the wireless radiation. If you're thinking about that, we have a lot of resources to help educate the administration, fellow parents, to let them know about this issue so that they can make the changes that need to be made to protect kids when it comes to screens. And also, I would have to add the blue light, huge issue. So there are private schools that are removing, or certainly many who are reducing, though we do recommend that the wireless be completely eliminated and replaced with a wired technology infrastructure for the students. But in those cases, they're not yet addressing the blue light. So we want to address all of these things: the blue light, the radio frequency, and the electric fields. And also telephones, the use of cell phones in class. So please go to our website at ehtrust.org on Wi-Fi in school, and you can learn more about that so that you can make a difference on this issue, so that when the kids go back to school after this, they have a safe technology infrastructure. Environmental Health Trust has a Patreon program. That means you can be on when we record videos with our expert scientists. We have a lot of videos you can watch that we've done in the past. We try to have something every month. Your support makes all the difference. So any support you can give to Environmental Health Trust is going right back into our life-saving resources. We have education for parents, education for students, education for workers, and we work all the time raising awareness with our elected officials. And please go to our website to read letters that we've sent and that other scientists have sent to elected officials about Wi-Fi in school, screens in school, 5G, and small cells, and impacts to the environment, to wildlife. I haven't talked about so many things, but we love to talk and share this, and we do that with our Patreon program. Thank you so much. And please sign up for our newsletter also, because we have a once-a-month newsletter where we get out the word on science that we've published, on different actions happening around the world, like different countries or cities that are halting or slowing 5G, and so on and so forth. We are so thankful for your support of Environmental Health Trust, and our website is ehtrust.org. Thank you.
Did you know that cell phone, the one in your pocket, emits radio frequency radiation? As long as your phone's turned on, even if you're not talking or texting.
The American Academy of Pediatrics in over a dozen countries recommends reducing children's exposure to wireless radiation.
When using a cell phone, I always keep it away from my body. I use speakerphone or a headset like this.
To stop microwave exposure, I put my phone on airplane mode and turn off Wi-Fi and Bluetooth function.
I hold the phone at a distance and make sure it's not touching my body.
Cell phones are not toys. Children's brains and bodies are still developing and are vulnerable to wireless radiation. Practice safe and responsible habits with yourself and your children.
When using the computer, I always try to make sure my connection is corded, not wireless.
Remember not to use your cell phone in the car. The phone works at higher power in metal surroundings and bounces around, increasing your family's radiation exposure.
For their safety.
For your safety.
Because children are more vulnerable.
Remind them.
Remind yourself.
To limit your microwave radiation exposures. Probably the most important thing I did, I was involved as a young scientist in the committee that actually reviewed the data and recommended that there be no smoking on airplanes. You may be shocked to hear that it was even a question for science at the time, but it was. And when I look at what we know now about mobile phone radiation, I see some very interesting similarities.
A growing number of prominent doctors and scientists are raising warning flags over radiation this morning, and your kids could be facing a greater risk of exposure.
I think the most important study is a study by the National Toxicology Program in a classic large carcinogenicity test, one of the largest ever performed, and for that matter, one of the most expensive. They found increased risk of the tumors which we believe radiofrequency radiation is causing in man. Particular tumors called schwannomas. In the rats, they were in the heart. In humans, they're often in the nerve, the ear nerve, the vestibular nerve.
Cell phone providers say they follow all safety guidelines put into place by the FCC. The current FCC safety standard was developed nearly 20 years ago.
The manufacturers actually tell people in the instruction manual, which I've never read, not to put the cell phone against your ear.
It does say exactly that. There's the BlackBerry, for example, warns to keep your phone at least 0.98 inches away from the body when transmitting. With an iPhone, for example, it's 5/8 of an inch.
At this point, the evidence has become sufficiently strong that cell phone radiation is a human carcinogen.
A major development from California's Department of Public Health. High use of cell phones may be linked to certain types of cancer and other health effects, including brain cancer and tumors, lower sperm counts, headaches, and effects on learning, memory, hearing, behavior, and sleep.
If it was a real problem, I would know. If it was a real problem, the government would protect us. How come I'm not hearing about this? They're all things I've heard when I give seminars. You know, I get up there and they say, oh yeah, if this was really a problem, they would have told us. I am they. I am a, legitimate scientist, and I am telling you.